Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. In this episode, we're going to look into an article that has just come out of Vanity Fair, in which the allegation is made, and you can actually see some evidence of this in the text that go between the line producer Gabrielle Pickle and the armorer Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. And what we see there is that days before Helena's death, the Rush producer reprimanded the armorer for spending too much time on weaponry. Before we get to the rest of this episode, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started. So when Brandon Lee was killed on the set of The Crow, investigators elected not to charge anyone, finding that negligence that was in play wasn't willful or wanton. So there was negligence, but there wasn't much of it, and it wasn't excessive, and it was also not sort of deliberate. In other words, it wasn't either intentional or excessive. In my view, the same can't be said for the Russ set. The same doesn't apply to the Russ set. Although an argument can certainly be made that no one intended to shoot Helena or intended to harm her, let alone kill her, I don't think that necessarily equates with a lack of intent. The fact that there were prior accidents means the negligence, in my view, might qualify as wanton. The fact that these prior discharges were not only brought to the producer's attention in emails and texts from numerous people, but that the fact that also concerned crew quit in protest on the day of the incident and the production persisted regardless, to me that suggests a level of willfulness that might meet the standard for intentional action while disregarding safety. What do you think? In other words, it may qualify as a kind of intentional recklessness. Think about it as you are driving a vehicle and say you're speeding and you have a close call with someone and the person in the vehicle next to you says, "Hey, slow down." And you persist, and then something else happens, and they say, "Well, you almost hit that person or you almost hit that vehicle," but you don't slow down, you keep going, and then there is a quote-unquote accident. Well, then weren't you driving with intentional recklessness? You were aware of what you were doing, but you continued regardless. You didn't adjust your behavior. So, it's clearly not the same as intending to harm somebody. In this case, the cinematographer, I really don't think the idea that anybody wanted to intentionally harm Helena. But what it does do is it addresses the possibility that a reasonable person could have or ought to have foreseen the possibility of something dangerous occurring, given what had already occurred. Clearly, some members of the crew recognized this and reacted. Why didn't others? To reiterate, I think there may be a case to say negligence on the Rush set was both willful and wanton. Okay, fair enough, you might say. How do you prove it in court? How do you prove that the negligence was both willful and wanton? And so that brings us to this article from Vanity Fair. It's just come out. I'll put a link to it also in the description. And here's a quote from it. Quote, "Days before Hutchins' death, Gutierrez-Reed was reprimanded by a manager for spending too much time on weaponry." This is what she said in the text. She said, "We hired you as both armorer and key assistant props. However, it has been brought to my attention that you are focusing far more on armor and not supporting props as needed." And that was a text sent by the line producer Gabrielle Pickle on October 14. The date of this text from line producer Gabrielle Pickle is worth noting. October 14 was just a week prior to the incident. Hannah's bosses were effectively ordering her to be less hands-on as the armorer. To her credit, Hannah pushed back. This again quoting from the article. Hannah was receiving mixed messages. In the same exchange, Gabrielle Pickle described two incidents in which a shotgun was found unattended and requested that a check-in procedure be put in place immediately that would keep firearms locked away when not in use. Hannah wrote back that a check-in system would slow the production and said she had repeatedly warned actors in safety meetings not to abandon weapons. That's the end of the quoted section. Now, this admission gives us a real sense of the true atmosphere on the set of Rust. You've got a young, inexperienced 20-something armorer on the set trying to maintain a standard only to be poo-pooed by more senior male actors. And, have a look at those actors. Do you think they're going to take a 22, 23-year-old, I think she's actually 24, do you think they're going to take her seriously? She's the newbie on the set. The article goes on to say, quote, an actor will set them somewhere, meaning set the gun down somewhere, and forget them, and that's just a thing that happens same as every other prop, Hannah told the line producer. Even days when we aren't doing gunfire, I'm still doing the armorer job, checking the guns in for every single scene and showing they're empty. So when guns are left by an actor, we at least know that they are a clear gun, end quote. Now, you would think in a situation like this, the producer could make the armorer's job easier by talking to the actors, by telling the actors to get their SHIT together and play ball. One actually senses that the approach was to have the armorer pick up after the actors, while giving the actors plenty of slack, plenty of leeway, maybe too much. When the line producer sort of insisted, Hannah responded, quote, well, Gabby, I think I've been taking my prop side seriously. So incredibly, on the same day as these exchanges with Gabrielle Pickle, the armorer actually dropped the name of the shooting victim in The Crow. Listen to this. This is also quoting from Vanity Fair. In another email exchange on October 14 with a crew member named TC, Hannah addressed the safety procedures surrounding the use of blanks by referencing another famous film set tragedy. She invoked The Crow from 1993, when a broken fragment of a dummy round was launched out of the barrel of a prop gun by a blank cartridge, killing the film's 28-year-old star. And this is what she wrote. Hannah wrote, as armorer, it's my job to be present when all actors fire. Misfires haven't happened on any of my sets. I always check barrels. Rest in peace, Brandon Lee. And that's the end of the quoted section. Let's be quite clear on this. 1 week into production, Hannah is kind of told to back off and be less hands-on in terms of her job as armorer. Basically, do more in terms of the ordinary props. 1 week after that, despite her adamancy that she be present when actors fire, she wasn't present. Hannah wasn't present in the church when Baldwin fired the fatal round. Was that her fault, or was she just following orders? I think she said something about that COVID had something to do with it, but if she was supposed to be present, why didn't anyone call for her? If there was consensus that she didn't need to be present, and bear in mind there were 14 people there, including the executive producer, the director, and the assistant director, then you can see how negligence may well have been willful. Ironically, in terms of the weapon itself discharging, we've just received word from a very unusual source that the vintage weapon may well have fired itself, and that'll be the subject of our next episode. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.